Hi Mark, welcome. We're just waiting for a couple of folk to arrive, and for those that have joined the broadcast, just to let you know that we're waiting for our folk to log in, but we should get started pretty soon.
Oh, excellent. All right. I was having a little trouble accessing it, and so I got confused, but I'm thanks. I'll stand by. Hello, everyone else.
I've just sent an email out to the folk that aren't with us yet, in case they, with the link, in case they're struggling to find the link. Look, I wonder if we shouldn't just get started, because I'm aware that Sandra has to leave or to chair another meeting in about 45 minutes time, and as folk pop in, they can just join in the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and everything is documented in the wikis, so we don't have to worry about issues like a quorum, as in sort of traditional meetings. So a very warm welcome to everyone here. Just a note that we are broadcasting live. I have received apologies from Jim Taylor, who's away traveling to wonderful places without reliable internet connectivity, as well as an apology from Sarah Lambert, who's unable to make today's meeting. So I'll just note those apologies, and we can get started. So the first item on the agenda. Hi, David Bull and David Sadler. We have two Davids. Glad you could join us. So we're just about to start. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. And so what I thought I would do is just quickly look at the structure of the minutes, because in reality, working with with open technologies, it seems kind of redundant to approve minutes, because everything is documented in the wiki. But the general structure we've been following for all our meetings is to post the agenda in the wiki, and that enables anyone in the working groups and the meeting to add their items to the agenda. In the case of the OERu Management Committee meeting, we do a live broadcast, so we have an accurate record of the decisions and what was discussed. Then we post a summary of the meeting, and in the case of the OERu Management Committee meeting, I do my best to try and timestamp the video recording, with the various components of the meeting. Being documented in the wiki, of course, any member of the group is able to comment on any of the decisions or refine and improve them, so that we have an accurate reflection of the meeting. The other feature that I've been using and testing out is listing the action items that arise out of each meeting, and then just using a simple, strikeout to indicate the tasks that have been completed. There's more or less the structures that we've been following. So I mean, I don't think that we physically need approval of the minutes, other than noting the meeting. Does that make sense? It doesn't seem appropriate to kind of have a formal approval process, given that it's all documented in the wiki and we approve as we go along.
Makes sense to me.
You too.
Sure.
Yeah, me too.
Great, thanks for that. In terms of matters arising, I think I've pretty much picked up everything from the last meeting. Did any of you notice any matters arising that I may have that are not included in the meeting agenda? I'll take silence to mean that there are no additions to the agenda at this time. So a quick report on the progress of our action items from the last meeting. There was a point about recruiting additional members for the marketing group. We've deferred that to the marketing working group, and I'm sure David will report back on that. Again, for the course approval and quality working group, this has been deferred to the actual working group, and I saw that Sarah posted a public announcement yesterday requesting additional members for that group. The outstanding item is to develop an instruction page for how we're going to schedule these processes. I'm in two minds as the best way to do that. I'm toying around with a plugin in WordPress that will help us schedule the tasks of the working groups. The other option I'm considering is a sortable table in the wiki, but I'll keep you posted on that, and once we have taken a decision on how to, sort of the project management and scheduling of the tasks, we can move that item forward. I have transferred the point about incorporating academic volunteers into the priority task. That's been done. We've alerted everyone of getting their objectives sorted. The suggestions from the previous meeting regarding the refinement of the aims and objectives, they have been posted. And the item on digital badging has been transferred for discussion to the credit transfer and course articulation group.
Wayne, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt, but I don't know if you're having time to monitor the group chat, but there are several people who can't hear. I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I suspect that a local audio setting issue, that maybe Google is not recognizing the audio. But thanks for that, Christine. It seems to be working for most, so I suspect that it might just be a local issue on the person's machine. Okay, so in terms of the report of the action items, that's really just for noting. Any comments relating to our progress so far?
Yeah.
Great. So, well, let's then move on to the report backs from our working groups, and I'll take it as the order in the agenda. So the first working group will be the curriculum and program of study group, and we have both Sandra and David Sadler online. Yeah, Sandra, are you reporting, or is David reporting? Or Sandra? Sandra is the one with audio challenges. So David, what I'll do is I'll upload the report in the window, and we could maybe juggle through that.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't had chance to tic-tac with Sandra, so in that sense, that's probably the best strategy.
Yeah, all good, David. I was at the meeting as well, so I could give a brief rundown. Our working group agreed the aims and objectives. We also, agreed that we're going to collaborate closely with the strategic planning working group on the audit for proposed OERu course contributions, and there has been some progress there, which we'll be reporting in the agenda. We agreed to start work on piloting an inventory of the OERu partners that have a Bachelor of General Studies on their books, just to do a comparison in terms of how these degrees or Bachelor of General Studies fit into the various institutions that have them on their books. I know that Sandra has started work and has circulated a summary of how things work at CSU. So that's work in progress. We agreed to pilot the instructions for the inventory that was circulated, and that the inventory of OERu courses has been launched. Sandra, I'm not sure if your audio is working yet, but if so, you're most welcome to jump in. But that's pretty much where we are at the moment. One of the action items we're keen to progress is in our various national jurisdictions to have a look to see if there are any regulatory barriers that may have an impact on how we plan and design the implementation of the OERu. So that's one of the items which is on the to-do list. David, is that a fair and accurate summary?
I think that's a fair and accurate summary. Just a couple of additions to that. I'm in Australia. I'm on what's called the Universities Australia Standing Group on Quality, and we're meeting tomorrow, and I have put the question of regulatory issues on the agenda for the discussion. So I should be able to give a fairly up-to-date, if not complete, view from Australia quite quickly. And the second is following Sandra's circulation of the CSU approach to general studies. We'll be able to issue, I think, from the University of Tasmania a similar structure and template within the next few days. It's given us the kind of format to use. I was struggling to think of the format, but that's Sandra's template is very useful.
Yes, I would agree with that, David. Sandra's template is useful, and the thinking is, once we've tweaked the templates, distribute with the groups for comment, and then we'll initiate the process to get that information. And I think it's an excellent idea of, the discussions with the quality assurance folk in the national jurisdictions, and I'm wondering whether we shouldn't try and encourage some of the other partners in their own national jurisdictions to start initiating some of those discussions. So I think that's a great step forward. Thanks, David. Okay, any other questions from the floor before we move on to the next report? Right, I'll take silence as an indication to move forward. Next in line, the Course Design and Development Partners Manual Group, and I'll hand over to you, Erwin.
Okay, hi everybody, good to see you all. We had a meeting about 2 weeks ago. 5 of the 9 of our group were able to participate. As with the previous group, we were able to agree on the proposed aims of the working group as originally posed. And those were to provide existing and new partners joining the OERu with the information they need to maximize the benefits of membership and participate actively in the operations of the OERu network. And then incorporate guidelines and suggestions for course design and development, incorporating exemplars of best practice. So really, when you kind of pull that apart a little bit, it's a process of determining who really is the target audience, who is the user of this manual. And it seems like there are 2 main clusters. One would be the OER partners, probably the more senior people within the organization working at a policy level, who would like to have and need a fairly quick and simple, clear, well-articulated overview of the strategic benefits of participation in the OERu and some of the very first simple things how to get involved. And then one area that would be drilling down a level, which is for course developers in a broad sense, subject matter experts, faculty, learning designers, graphic designers, multimedia people, and so on that are involved in doing the courses. And the best way to do this that we felt would be, first of all, for the OER partners and senior people, just a very high level, maybe something like the five elements or 5 points of the OERu and reasons for joining and the benefits of participating and how to fully engage. And then the second one, which is more detailed, but rather than writing a lot of new content, virtually all the information that's needed is already in WikiEducator. We just need to locate it and compile it, either in a web page or a PDF document. We kind of withheld that decision for the time being as to what format it would take. And then the other area, of course, is the design of courses themselves, and for that we'll produce a piece on that as well too, without being obviously prescriptive, but trying to encourage building a core of expertise in designing within the OERu framework and context and milieu. We got a very good suggestion from Sarah about possibly having a mini MOOC that would be used as an orientation group, a process for orienting new groups. But at this time, we just felt that was outside our scope. We initially felt that we should just revisit that later. And also, it was agreed that also manual could be needed for students who would be participating. We're also not seeing that as our first purpose, but kind of parked those for later consideration. We intend to have the first version of the manual done, I guess, around the middle of July, I believe it was. We haven't had time for a second meeting yet because one of our key participants is traveling right now, but within the next week or so we should at least have the major pieces of this process outlined. We did put together a broad draft of the table of contents, and it looks something like, let's take a look here. Just give me a second. Five things you need to know about the OERu, a bit about the logic model, how courses and credentials work, how to become involved, including institutional membership and participatory roles, and then how to develop a course for the OERu. And it includes getting started in the wiki, putting a team together, communication practices, delivery formats and models, thinking about OERu learners, and designing for assessments and credit, which really interfaces with the bigger question as to how our courses need to be designed such that they can be credited by at least several of the institutions in order to get them into the transfer credit system within the OERu. That's about where we're at.
Yeah, thanks, Erwin. Great progress. Any questions from the floor? Right. Just one point I wanted to mention, just that we could maybe flag it, and this will come up, I guess, later in the technology group report. We had a good suggestion with the technology working group of documenting a workflow process around the development of OERu courses and the like. And I was thinking that it actually might be a good idea to have our two groups, the partners manual group and the technology group, working on a wiki page documenting a suggested workflow process, because I think that would be extremely helpful, to all involved. So we can get the technology aligned with sort of the design process.
Definitely, those two are very much interlinked, and it's not only even the workflow, but also just what technologies will be used, sort of in the final event for doing this. So yes, fully agree.
Yeah, so I'll make a note of that we get our two groups working on that item. Right, thanks for that, Owen.
Okay.
Moving down the agenda, the course approval and quality group hasn't met to date yet. Sarah is in the process of recruiting additional members. I'm happy to report that Dr. Marcus Harms from the University of Southern Queensland has agreed to join that group. So I'm sure that the group will be meeting soon and aligning its work with the curriculum and program of study group. So the next group, and I see Christine for some other reason has not been able to join. I'm not sure. Let me just check here.
No,
Ron,
I'm here.
oh, okay. Sorry, I just didn't see your icon. Sorry about that, Christine.
I don't have a specialized icon.
Oh, that's all good, because when I was looking quickly at the icons at the bottom, I didn't see you. So my apologies. So I'll hand over to you, Christine. Let me just get the summary up.
Okay, well, we did have a meeting in the middle of May, and we actually, what I'm not seeing the summary. I'm seeing a video of David.
Oh, just click on my link.
Oh, okay.
Then you should see it.
Yeah. Okay. We did go through the objectives, and now I've got the other David. Sorry, it keeps disappearing. I'm not moving my mouse or anything.
Not to worry. What's happening is when the sound. I'll post the link in the chat window. If you click on that and open that up in a new tab or window, you'll have access to it.
Okay. Thanks, Wayne. So we did go over the objectives, and we did approve them. There was some email discussion after we approved the objectives, because in the objectives, a discussion or an item concerning digital badges had been left off the original list. And so we had some email conversation about it because there's disagreement within the group about whether or not we should be pursuing an objective related to digital badging at this point. And we agreed by email to set that up for our next meeting, which hasn't, well, I think we have it scheduled, but we haven't had it yet. We decided that we want to audit build on the report that Diane Conrad and Rory and Gabby Witterhouse did on the capacity of the OERu partners to do PLAR, to look through that and then do another audit, really focusing on people's reception of the courses that are currently on offer, and the ability of the people, the institutions offering courses, what they can do around awarding credit and putting it on a transcript. We set up a document, or Wayne set up a document. I'd have to say we, the royal we here, was Wayne who set up the document, a Google document for designing the survey instrument. And but at this point, I'm the only person who's commented. And so I sent out a reminder this morning, but no one has commented other than Mark commenting that he can't comment. I mean, he can't access a document to comment, so we'll have to sort that out.
That's always an issue for me.
I offered to, or Wayne offered to send an invitation to see if we could get someone who works in a registrar's office to join the working group, because with the credit transfer issues that we're talking about, it seemed important to have someone who has that kind of technical expertise. And also Wayne was going to contact the Commonwealth of Learning to see if one of their transnational qualification framework people would be willing to join the working group, but we haven't heard back yet, Wayne, whether anything happened with that.
The reason you
what
haven't heard anything is because they're still work in progress.
Oh, okay. So we know what we want to do, but we haven't. We have only made a start on doing it. Well, we know most of what we want to do. We still have the digital badges thing to discuss.
Yeah, thanks for that, Christine. Any thoughts or comments, suggestions from the floor? If not, I'll move on to the next report. And the next on the list is the Technology Working Group. And Brian, I'm going to hand over to you.
Right, thanks. So we had a meeting last week. There were 7 of us on the call, including a number of people who have been doing some interesting prototyping work. So some of the things we did review and approve the proposed aims of the working group, and I won't read them all, but essentially it is to try to build out a technical infrastructure for the course development work group to ensure we have interoperability amongst our institutions, and that we're trying to do it in a way that prioritizes openness in practice as well, and things like formats and platforms and things like that. And just a generalized sense that we want to enhance the technology framework we have in terms of the platforms, and also to be able to adopt audio and video into it. So we discussed some of the recent work that was done. I believe on this agenda that you were sent, if you scan down to the, sorry, I got 3 tabs open, in the meeting papers, there's some of the theming prototypes that were developed, I believe, by Tim McCallum. I think Jim Tetzler was working on it as well. Some of the stuff is quite interesting, using the Bootstrap protocol, which, among other things, allows for responsive design that works well on mobile devices, tablets, and phones. Some interesting just proof of concept prototypes of what MediaWiki can do on other platforms, and as well some different theming works, though the theming itself is still, very much a prototype sort of thing. So we probably spent 3/4 of the meeting really going back and forth, and I can't say that we came to a conclusion, but we were mindful of a report that Sarah Lambert had submitted to the group, identifying some usability and aesthetic concerns from her group, and just, I think as well, just some of our experiences that the MediaWiki platform, although it's incredibly powerful, and I'm a bit of a wiki nerd myself, those of us who have tried to take this platform out to casual users have certainly experienced pushback. So we, I think, discussed a few different approaches. I think where we came to was that we probably could have look to try to have a few different content authoring approaches that might work differently for different types of environments. I think MediaWiki will, for the time being, continue to be a really important repository, in part because it's such a powerful mixing and syndication tool that can push out to a lot of environments. And we're going to be, I think, as a working group, spending a lot of time on trying to think about a so-called publishing layer. It may have that Bootstrap approach that we saw prototyped. It might be WordPress. It might be another open source environment that allows us to have kind of a more designed, aesthetically appealing approach, perhaps more in line with the OERu website, which I think is quite well done. So I can't say we came to conclusions there, but it was a good discussion, and I think we got a good sense of where we are and where we can be looking. So the second major item that I just wanted to put out relates to the Google Summer of Code. And I believe that there is a link. It's item number 8 in the agenda. So there's a Google Summer of Code project by Akash Agarwal, and it has to do with peer evaluation. Although this project is running all summer, the nature of the development and the types of work that's being done on this project if there can be any feedback to this project, if people wanted to have an interest in peer evaluation and whether this prototype and development work can support their interest in peer evaluation, I think the one thing that kind of was reported to the tech group is that I urge everyone to at least take a look, and if you do have feedback or suggestions or needs or just have an interest, to contact Akash as soon as possible, because this is the type of project where feedback early on is extremely valuable, and then once development gets underway, it's a little harder to incorporate. And I guess along those lines, in terms of making a call to the community, we talked about that, the idea of having a more attractive development layer. And item number 7 in the agenda is a request for quotation that Wayne was kind enough to draft up, and I think is quite good. And this is the idea that we do want to have a more attractive, responsive design. You know, I think an appearance and a framework that we can all feel proud of, and that's appealing and engaging to the community. So we just wanted to, I think what we need to do is to put out to the community as we move ahead in this development work, that we really urge any of the community partners who have any means to contribute anything to take part in it. So if you have coders that can contribute to the project, great. In-kind contributions could be things like doing usability testing or working with us on documentation or whatever. Or simply put, if you have any money in your budgets that could be pooled so that we could actually hire you know, a top flank designer to do this work in this with this quote, that would be very welcome as well. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of money. I think, you know, we're talking at TRU scraping up $500 to $1,000 from a project development budget. And, you know, if we have a significant number of members that put something like this forward, we can actually get a lot of work done. So I think those are the main key points to report out. I hope I covered it accurately. I think there were a couple of people here that were on that call. If they have anything to add, please do.
Well, thanks, Brian. I think you've given a very accurate summary of the meeting, and you know, highlighted, you know, the key points that and the priority items that the group has identified. So, you know, thanks for that. Any other comments from the floor on Brian's report? Suggestions? Okay. I also just want to mention that we have a poster, and I apologize, Joyce, that this is a bit late. But Joyce has on the feed noted that digital badges can potentially make credit transfer issues more difficult. So I just want to acknowledge Joyce's contribution, and that we have noted that. Right. So moving on. The next item on the agenda is the PLA portfolio course, and I know we haven't made much progress on this yet, but we have a couple of ideas. I'm just going to hand over to Mark. And let me just get that open.
Yeah.
There we go, Mark.
Oh, good, thanks. Yeah, there isn't, as you can see there, there's just basically 2 sentences in our area. I've recently been asked to help out with convening the PLA-R group, and we have not had a meeting yet. We've had a couple of preliminary discussions. I will say that there are a couple of things that have already been posted. I know that my institution has posted its what we call in the States PLA courses, PLA 100 and 200. We've made those open, and they could now be used by anybody, but of course that's sort of circumventing the whole process of reviewing them for content to make sure that they're actually interesting to anybody. But that may be a good place for the group to start, and I know others have been thinking about things along these lines as well. So I'm hoping that at the next time we meet, I'll have a bit more to report to you on our progress.
Yeah. You know, thanks for that, Mark. And you know, I think if you were to have a PLA or PLA or RPL course available for credit that learners could take would be a huge plus to the network. And a big thank you to Thomas Edison State College for openly licensing the course materials that you've got. So I think that's a great development. I should note that Diane has requested to step down. She's moving on to a new and exciting phase in her life and career. So and I'm also very grateful to have the expertise of Mark, who is very knowledgeable in this field, to convene the group. So thanks for that, Mark.
Happy to help, of course.
Any questions, thoughts from the group? If not, I will move on to the next item on the report back. So the next group is the Marketing, Recruitment and Communication group, and I see David Bull is with us, so you have the floor, David.
Thanks, Wayne. Hello, everybody. Yeah, look, the Marketing, Recruitment and Communication Working Group has met on one occasion. We met on the 6th of May. And it's actually a very small group at the present time, and the first meeting of the group was comprised of just Wayne and myself. But we did manage to work through our agenda at that time and have made a little bit of headway, so I can report on a few things. Firstly, of course, we looked at the aims and objectives, and we did actually confirm the aims and objectives of the working group, and subsequently those aims and objectives have been transferred to the home page. Essentially, the aims and objectives were concerned with attracting and recruiting more partners to the OERu, and secondly, attracting and eventually, recruiting students to the OERu, and also we're concerned particularly with the kind of communication strategy around promoting the OERu much more widely. So one of the things, one of the key outputs of the particular meeting with regard to recruiting additional partners was that we were to request a letter from the chair of the OERu Council of Chief Executive Officers, essentially to ask partners to try to assist recruiting additional partners to the group. Wayne has certain objectives for a certain number of new partners within the next 12 months, and we felt that probably one of the better ways to secure appropriate partners was to ask our existing partners for their recommendation. With regard to further regard to that, we felt that we should make use of our existing marketing departments in terms of looking at the marketing and recruitment materials that currently exist for the OERu, and in particular to develop a kind of BL brochure which might assist with the recruitment of new partners, something that would be quite attractive but would quickly outline the benefits of being a member. I don't know that we've made much headway with that at the moment. The idea was to basically go to the directors or managers of the marketing departments of our institutions, not to necessarily occupy their time significantly, but to get their advice and assistance with the branding of materials and the conveying of information in an appropriate way.
Thanks for that, David. I can also just give some updates. I have consulted with Alan Davis, the chair of the OERu Council of CEOs, and he's quite comfortable to send out a letter to all the partners, inviting them to assist with identifying strong candidates for membership. The idea is, if in theory, if each of our partners were to identify one new partner, or a successful lead to one new partner, we would exceed our 2-year targets in recruitment for the network. So I do think it is something worth pursuing. The other point I wanted to raise was, and Erwin, you will recall David Porter had a number of good ideas around some of the marketing related stuff, and I'm sitting wondering whether we shouldn't ping David and to see if we can progress some of that, because he had some very good ideas about a succinct communication to prospective partners. So I think that's something that we should follow up on. Erwin, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he did express that that sentiment in our meeting, so it might be good to follow up with him and see if he'd be willing to chip in on that.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks.
David here. I think this is important. We here are trying to frame our own marketing around what we're doing in the MOOC space, and OERu is very relevant to some of the social determinants of what we do, and it would be useful to have that very succinct, I think, marketing explanation for incorporation, and that's also a useful way, I think, of building up the dissemination of the knowledge of OERu and the principles on which it's based.
Yeah, thanks for that, David. I think that's a very important point. So we'll definitely follow up on that. I just also want to note the contributions from Joyce McKnight from ESC. She has noted that herself and one of her colleagues would be able to contribute to the PLA group. So, Mark, we have more help. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Any other comments from the floor relating to the marketing, recruitment, and communication?
The only thing I'd like to add, Wayne, is we did discuss, and I noticed it's further down the agenda. We did discuss the assistance and importance of our various partner contributions to OERu news announcements. No point in going into that now, but I noticed it's number 9 on further down the agenda today, and
Yep.
Worthy of mention, I think.
Yep.
So thanks for that.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's a good point, David. I mean, each of our partners do have marketing professionals, so if 2 or 3 of them could just help donate a little time to polish up, any sort of the marketing stuff, because neither David or myself are marketing professionals. So that professional input and expertise would be well received. Right. Moving on, the strategic planning group. I'll report back on behalf of Jim Taylor. This was one of the first groups that met. We agreed the aims and objectives as all the other groups had done. Our key activities were to commence the audit of anticipated course contributions. I'm happy to report that that has progressed well. We've developed a set of instructions for the completion of a very, very short online form. And at this stage, it's really about identifying, a course contribution that the partner wants to work on, and then we will work with the partners in, progressing that to the development of a full course in time. So our target is within the network to identify 20 new courses across the network to commence development on. The other key area of the strategic planning working group was to initiate the open strategic planning consultation, and that is also in progress. We will report in more detail in the main agenda of the meeting. So the only outstanding item from our action list is defining the roles and responsibilities of the various stakeholders in the OERu network. In part, this relates to governance and implementation and operational planning. So that is something which we will work into the process and the final development of the document. So it's noted there so we don't lose the idea. So that's where we're at the moment. Any comments or feedback from the floor? Great, so I'll take silence to mean assent. Right, moving on with the agenda. As I indicated, we have initiated the audit of proposed course contributions. So how the process will work, there are a set of instructions which we've set out to guide people with their submissions. We recognize, and this is an issue that was raised in the curriculum group, that we are dealing with, a catch-22 kind of situation. We have to generate a critical mass of courses in order to start thinking about streaming and having a program of study on the table. So this is the first part in that process. We sent out an email to all the contact people as well as on all the email lists, encouraging our partner members to submit their courses that they are keen to start developing. To date, we've received 2 course nominations on the list. I do know through communications with the network, a number of partners are working on ideas. And at this time, we're also looking to get an update of, sort of courses that are in progress, just so that we've got an update on, how the program of study is evolving. So that's in process. I will continue to remind folk that we're looking for these contributions, and we'll see where we end up. Any thoughts, comments from the floor? Great. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, the strategic planning consultation. Just to give a quick overview of how this has been set up. We have divided the consultation process for the development of the strategic plan into 3 main phases. First, an open consultation phase, followed by a synthesis phase, and then the final approvals. We've already completed not completed, but the first phase for giving feedback on the strategic goals has been completed, and at the beginning of this week we are receiving feedback on the operational priorities. During the synthesis phase, we'll kick off the synthesis phase with a Scope online seminar where all the inputs we've received to date will be brought together, and we'll discuss those. I have already confirmed dates with BC Campus, who've kindly offered to host that seminar for us. Ultimately, we are targeting the approval of the strategy by the OERu Council of CEOs at the 10 November meeting in Sydney, and then leading up to the final approvals by the OER Foundation Board of Directors. So that's a high-level summary of the process. As you'll appreciate, conducting a large open consultation like this is complex, but I think we are making good progress thus far. In terms of the feedback we've received to date, high-quality feedback, and each of the submissions have added quality to what we're trying to develop. In terms of a little background, the strategic plan was cast from the decisions and discussions that were made at the OERu 2013 partners meeting. So it's a good opportunity for us to revisit and rethink the recommendations in the light of recent developments. I should note that the strategic goals page has already recorded just short of 1,000 page views. So people are looking at the strategic goals, and I assume, given my experience of the academy, if any academics are opposed to any of the suggestions that are posted, they they won't be shy to raise their voices. So that is progressing well. And just again, a call to folk in the management committee, to take a look if you have any suggestions, to please add them in the wiki. We're also looking over the next 2 weeks at the operational priorities. The thinking there is really to get our heads around, the calibration and the targets we are aiming to achieve. Are they realistic, given our capacity and what we're wanting to achieve? So, any feedback and thoughts relating to the strategic planning consultation thus far?
A question, Wayne, and I'm sorry if I missed something on the wiki. With strategic plan consultations, I think the interesting question is the extent to which we're getting feedback and asking questions of the contributing community, whether it be the existing partners or potential other partners, and or other kinds of stakeholders that would be interested and potential recipients of what we do. In other words, some of the international organisations that are behind us, or indeed potential student groups or governments in other developing communities. And have we got a sense that we're getting a wider input, or is this essentially the universities that are potential or actual partners framing the structure that we will operate within?
So, excellent question, David. In terms of how we are disseminating the information, the invitation for feedback goes out to all the community lists which the OER Foundation maintains.
Right.
So that would be the OERu list. It would be the full Wiki Educator community, which is a couple of thousand people. Your public posts on our news. So in theory, it's open and should be getting out there. But I mean, I think your point is well made. I think we should be proactive in trying to secure comments from the stakeholders you've identified, because I do think it's important to get feedback, from folk who are outside the network and the prospective clients we're aiming to serve, as well as governments and the international agencies. Regarding the international agencies, I can follow up on that. The implementation of the OERu is a designated project of the UNESCO Commonwealth of Learning Chair Network, so I can formally request feedback from both the Commonwealth of Learning and UNESCO on the strategic plan, and that's a good point. I'll follow up on that. It would be good. I mean, it would be great if I could get ideas from the management committee in terms of how we can approach folk who are not necessarily being reached by the communications that are going out, because I do think it's important to get as wide as possible feedback in terms of planning these strategic futures. So thanks for that, David. And any suggestions from folk on in terms of getting input from stakeholder groups who may are not reached by our traditional communication channels?
Well, I think one of the things, Wayne, is if we did have contact with the international agencies, if we could have a way in which they could, on their websites or their communications, actually point the way for the OERu consultation. So that might be a way of reaching potential recipients of what we do.
Good. That's an excellent suggestion, David, and I'll follow up on that.
Okay.
Other thoughts? Okay. The one advantage we do have, I think there's sufficient time. We've got until kind of October before we actually start trying to craft the first draft of the strategic plan. So there is ample time for input to be received, even though we're phasing in the consultations on different components of the strategic plan every fortnight. The the feedback process is open, and it's asynchronous, so anybody can continue to add to that feedback, and I'll continue to encourage the OERu partners, to provide feedback. Great. So, sorry, did I hear somebody wanting to make a comment, or no? Moving on. The next item on the agenda, number 7, is the item to which Brian has already referred, the request for quotation on improving the presentation layer of our course content. And there's agreement right across the network that the sort of look and feel of the wiki content is like so 1990s, and we are very keen and motivated to improve that. Brian has referenced some of the prototyping work that has been done, and there are links at the bottom of the agenda in the meeting papers. But basically, the thinking at this point in time is that from a very simple structured table of contents, it is possible using a number of technologies to implement a customized look and feel. So this is just a prototype demonstration. There's no real graphic design that has taken place here. But just to point out that we do have the technologies that will enable us to brand and give a contemporary look and feel to content from basically just an outline of wiki pages in the wiki. So what item 7 on the agenda is about, and I just want to acknowledge the inputs of Jim Titzler. Brian, you may not be aware of this, but the request for quotation was developed by Jim Titzler, which defines the sort of technical requirements for moving this forward. And so the thinking now is to progress this, that we develop a look and feel which is aligned with the design of the OERu website, in parallel with building this technology in a way that would enable individual partners to customize the theme for their own institutions, taking their own brand look and feel into account. So this is where the thinking is at the moment. There is this open request for quotation available, so the question to our network is twofold. If there are any units within our partner institutions who would be able to quote on the development of that work, it would be great to hear from you, because then we can get more quotations in terms of how much it would cost to develop this theming capability. And then secondly, if there are any of our institutions who have the small budget line somewhere, as Brian had indicated, $500 or $1,000 to help progress this once we've got quotes in, that's going to put us in a new space. I mean, one of the unique requirements of the OER University network is the ability to be able to integrate our course materials into the local learning management systems or the local delivery technologies that are used. So this development is aimed to be designed in a way that we can use a variety of delivery platforms, sort of kind of at the presentation layer, so to speak. So that's where we're at there. Thoughts? Any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, it's Erwin here. Just to check with that, do I assume that for the time being we continue as we keep developing, just keep working in the existing environment? I mean, not that that will necessarily change, but is there any reason to hold back right now?
No, no reason to hold back. We use the current environment because using the current environment, we would always have a migration path. Should we decide to start thinking about different authoring environments. So, I mean, for now, we use the current environment. It is, based on our experience, the most robust, scalable, and reliable environment to be working with here and now. Given the nature of the network, so we will continue on that path. And in parallel, we're also looking very, very closely at lowering the barriers of entry to editing. One of the recent developments with MediaWiki, and if those who are active editors on Wikipedia will be aware of this, there's a new visual editor. But basically what this means is the average user will never have to look at Wikitext. It's a very rich editing environment. So our suspicion is that those barriers will be lowered as we move forward. And from the tech team side, we are actively moving that migration forward in order to incorporate the visual editors. So, I think these incremental steps, things are going to get better, but also with a lot more flexibility for our individual partners to be able, to add their own brand, look and feel, to take ownership of the code that is underlying what we're doing. So, and that will all be done openly and transparently.
Thanks.
Great. Brian has already mentioned this. The OER Foundation, as a small non-profit, we are actually very, very fortunate to have made the selection this year for a Google Summer of Code student. And we have a third-year student from IIIT Hyderabad who was selected and to develop enhancements around peer evaluation. What I should emphasize at this point in time, the OERu is not intending to substitute traditional summative evaluation processes with peer evaluation. This is not what we're aiming to do. However, for formative evaluation and for recognizing components of engagement in courses, we are looking at peer evaluation mechanisms to help support the network. There is a scalability issue involved here from our experiences in running other prototypes with different forms of evaluation. There is clearly a big scalability challenge. So this is what this is about. All the documentation of the project is available in the wiki, and so I'd like to echo Brian's strong call for for us and folk who have an interest in this sort of thing in your institutions to please provide feedback. This is extremely important in helping Akash develop his specifications for the code development. It's a very tight timeline. The summer sounds long, but in coding terms, that time is going to run out very quickly. So a strong call to all folk to please give us input on how to shape this peer evaluation process. Any thoughts or comments from the group there?
Just simply to say, I'm looking at it now on the wiki, and it's chiming, I think, with some of the things that we're taking forward strategically within the university here in Tasmania. So I will have discussions here, but I think we will be quite keen to provide that kind of feedback.
Much appreciated, David. Thank you very much. Right. Moving on, David Bull has already referred to this. At the OERu Partners meeting, one of the working groups put forward this proposal that on a regular basis our partner institutions provide input into the news announcements that we carry on the OERu website. And we do have a large international footprint, so this news actually does get out to many corners of the planet. We have had a couple of examples to date: the announcement of UNISA's new OER strategy. BC Campus developed a post summarizing the prototyping work we did with the micro courses. There was, of course, the post from Thompson Rivers University documenting or announcing the news of the first OERu learner who'd actually applied it, credit towards a degree. So again, just a call to our partner institutions, if you have relevant OER or OERu related news, if you could just help us in, developing a blog post, just get in touch with me and we'll help you, get that posted. Regarding the membership recruitment initiative, we've chatted about this already. The idea is that a letter will go out from the chair of the Council of the OERu Council of Chief Executive Officers, with an invitation and request to our partner institutions to assist with identifying successful leads. From our experience over the last 2 years, the majority of our recruitments have come from strong leads. Blind sort of invitations tend not to work well in this environment. So any help that you can give us there would be greatly appreciated. And the significance of this, achieving an additional 20 partners over the next 2 years is quite significant for 2 reasons. We will achieve a fiscally self-sustaining project without reliance on any third-party donor funding. And there aren't many OER initiatives in the world that have achieved that target. And the second point, which is extremely interesting, is once we reach that point as a charitable organization, any surplus revenue we generate gets plowed back into the benefits of the network. And so that opens up a number of very interesting opportunities. For example, commissioning the paid development of courses for the OERu network. And so this will contribute significantly to helping us scale the model. So that's on the membership recruitment. Any comments from the floor? Right, moving on. The arrangements and scheduling for the 2014 series of meetings is progressing very well. The invitation for this Council of CEOs meeting has gone out. We already have 15 senior executives who have confirmed their attendance from 6 countries. The closing date for the RSVPs was a little bit earlier for the CEOs meeting. All the announcements and invitations for the partners meeting, which will be hosted by our colleagues at the University of Tasmania, has gone out. We're also extremely excited by the fact that this has been, or the meeting will run back to back with the Australian National Symposium on open education. So it's a great opportunity for these 2 groups to meet. And there's an open invitation for OERu partners also to attend the National Symposium meeting. So just a reminder that the registrations are open, and that we continue to encourage folk from our institutions to join those meetings. Any questions about the 2014 meetings? Right. Item 12 on the agenda, just to get a bit of a reflection and sense of how our committee structures are working and the process that we're adopting. And this is kind of the first time within the OERu network that we are attempting moving the agenda forward in this way by having a range of working groups, that the conveners of the working groups form part of our management committee. We have regular meetings. Everything is documented in the wiki. So some thoughts and initial feedback on the process. Do we need to tweak anything? Is it working? How can we improve? I take silence to mean we've got everything under control.
Yeah, just one thought, Erwin here, and that's and I don't even know how to address this, but I guess part of the intention has always been to stay as agile as possible as an organization, and so I think it's great that we have the structure that we have in the groups and the meetings and so on, and that was something that came out of the fall meetings, and I just find that. And again, I don't have an answer to it. There's a lot of stuff coming out of this that puts a lot of load on people, and you kind of sense that from others as well too. And one thought I have is that I think all of us in our institutions are going to have to try to find more people to participate fairly quickly, even in calls for participation that we have in these various projects. I think all of us have a number of people in our own organizations that could chip in and help out if we were able to recruit them. Otherwise, I think we're all going to, at some point, get fatigued with trying to stay on top of all the different pieces of this. So that's just a suggestion, a general thought for, I appreciate any reflections on that idea.
Yeah,
I'd like to say something too, Erwin, on that point, because I think we can also kind of get institutionally overloaded, because if you look at who's on this meeting, there are 3 of us here from TRU. And, I think the institutions, the partners, at some point must start to question, well, how much am I supposed to give? Like, are we supposed to be running OERu, or, because it becomes like a major activity.
Well, and one thing is that I think over time it's good to try to regularize OERu work as part of work of certain of the staff within our organizations, and seeing how we can do that sort of collaboratively and spreading that around the partnership. And maybe that's got to be one of our strategic goals, is to determine the amount of effort needed by individual institutions, just in terms of the overall management and oversight of this, as well as, of course, the detailed work of developing courses. Because in the end, I don't know to what extent there are volunteers outside the OERu network within the Wiki Educator community at large willing to come and help and chip in on the actual work of developing the courses and getting them into the wiki. Or is it going to really be collaboration among our institutions, or each institution doing the work on its own course and seeing to what extent it could recruit maybe volunteers within the community? So that I don't know, but this is just the tip of the iceberg, and maybe we see that phenomenon reflected in the small number of courses so far that have really come out there, come to fruition within the wiki.
Yeah, Erwin, I'm nodding my head as you're speaking. I mean, I think those are all critical questions that we need to answer, and I think your point is well made, that we this should perhaps be one of our strategic objectives in the plan. When it slots into the plan, we'll need to have a look. So it would be great if you could add that feedback to the strategic planning consultation process. The other issue, which I think is important, recognizing we're at an interesting juncture in the history of the OERu, in that there are some infrastructure pieces that we actually need to get into place, and so that's ramping up sort of the workload, so to speak. I mean, we need to know how credit transfer and articulation is going to work. We need to have sort of a high-level recommendation around course development and all these things. So we're at that phase of our journey where we try to put a bunch of infrastructure pieces in place, which my sense is that it's requiring a higher workload than what would ordinarily be required from your sort of OERu membership. I mean, essentially the model is about assembling, two courses, and that's kind of sort of where things stop. Obviously, other partners will be doing more. So, and you're right, finding the agile sort of approach, because I mean, I think that's something very special about the OERu, is the agility and our incremental design approach that we've got. We kind of do what we can with what we've got, is a feature of what we're doing. So, and as we learn, we hopefully are going to find better answers, to these questions.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Wayne, look, I think the points made by Erwin and Christine are really valid, and in terms of the most of these working groups and so on basically being made up of, really committed people from 3 or 4 or 5 different institutions. And yet we do have, of course, I'm not exactly sure how many, but it must be 20 plus, maybe even 30 OERu member partners now. I'm just wondering whether it's worth revisiting a bit more closely some of those partners who have clearly signed up as partners and have an interest, but perhaps there hasn't been the people in those institutions that have kind of stepped forward yet to take a more active role. And I think if we could engage just a few more people from a few more of our partner institutions across these committees, then we would be able to move things forward a bit faster, perhaps.
Yeah. Oh, I agree, David, and that's a good point. You know, I'm sitting thinking in the letter that we send out from the Council of CEOs, whether we shouldn't just alert our partners, you know, to this point. I mean, part of our agreement is that each partner contributes a 0.2 FTE. So I think a reminder to senior management across the network might help, increase engagement.
Yeah.
So I've made a note of that. Yeah. Thanks for that, David.
Well, I wonder, this is Mark at Thomas Edison. I wonder if it wouldn't be worth it for us to sort of drop in on each of those institutions, or even our own institutions, just to find out what are the obstacles that they're facing right now. What do they need to move ahead with, becoming more engaged, or developing courses, or something. Maybe it's worth sort of a one-on-one phone call, or to each of them, rather than a letter. I think if somebody doesn't really know what to do, it's easy to just put a letter like that aside, But maybe we need to. This is new for a number of these institutions. Maybe we need to really get a clearer sense of whether or not they have the recipe, if you will, for how to proceed on whatever aspect of the process they're stuck on at the moment.
I really agree with that, Mark, and one of the things that I'm finding is, our institution is really committed to OERu, and we can see definite benefits for our institution. But as the work to be done becomes more clearly defined, there seems to be a greater divergence between what is useful to TRU, at least in the work I've been asked to take on, between what is useful to TRU and what's useful to OERu. And I think it's the nature of things that where I'm serving both, I'll put a lot of energy, where what OERu seems to think needs to be done doesn't really go very well with what I'm trying to do in my day job, is going to get less attention. And I think that's partly something that's only come out with the working groups articulating their objectives and so on.
Yeah. And Chris, that's an excellent point. I mean, if we were more successful as a network in identifying those things that serve both the home institution as well as the partnership, we are going to be in a better place. So, and I think Mark's point of actually contacting and approaching each of our partners, to ask this question, what are the barriers, have that discussion, is an excellent step forward. My request is, this is again the catch-22. I'm happy to take that on and move that agenda forward. But if anybody is able to help me do that, 30 phone calls is a working week with the partners. So if anybody does, nobody has free time. But if anybody's got a bit of time to help donate to the effort of widening access to education, in maybe conducting one or two of those interviews with our partners, that would be great.
Or we could divide it by continent or something. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to cut across there, but Wayne, I think we've already had a discussion about the ways in which it would be ideal for each of us to try and find another institution, and maybe that's the point of discussion, that it's not just about joining and maybe contributing a unit, but there's also some infrastructural work to be done, and we'd value particular forms of contribution in that space. So whether it be membership of a working group or whatever it may be.
Yeah. I'm noting that down, David. Thanks.
Another point, if I could, is we recently had a CNIE conference here, and a colleague and I did a presentation on the OERu. It's one that has been modified over time, made a number of times. And one of our local partner institutions asked if I would give that presentation at their institution, which of course I'm more than happy to do. in order to help a larger number of people within the organization understand what it's all about. And also, I think, to be able to answer some questions about what are some of the benefits to the institution. And I'm guessing that quite a few of us within the network have been sort of preaching the gospel, putting together presentations and talking. I see a number of OERu presentations that are already available online, which I'm sure we could borrow and adapt. And so maybe that is one approach that we actually try to help out other institutions and make that as an offer. I mean, this was fortuitous, but maybe we could be more intentional about offering these kinds of presentations.
Yeah, Erwin, I found from my own experience, doing a number of speaking gigs about the OERu has been extremely helpful for the network. Folk getting a sense of what this is really about and how it works. So, that's a great item for a news post, Erwin. your presentations.
Yeah. I mean, those presentations, most of them are open educational resources.
Yeah.
In SlideShare, yeah.
And so, I'm also just mindful, in terms of my convening of this meeting, just one or two posts which have come up in the feed. Mark, in relation to your question where the list of courses is at the moment, in terms, I mean, this is one of the shortcomings we've got. We actually don't have good information on what courses individual partners are working on at the moment. So in part, this inventory process that we are conducting now is to get up-to-date information on that and also updates on the status of the developments, because there has been some work that's been happening at partner institutions that the network is not aware of. And again, this is where I stress it's so important that we communicate openly on our open lists. I receive a plethora of personal emails telling me about stuff. And it's very hard to manage that process across 30 institutions on 5 continents, and if that information is not public, it doesn't benefit the network. So again, continually encouraging our partners to communicate openly. So we hope to address that one, Mark. Joyce has also made valuable comments about clearly defining the roles of stakeholders and the partner institutions in the OERu, and I think we can address some of those issues in the partners manual and the marketing material, these infrastructure pieces that we need to get into place. So I just want to acknowledge the contributions on the wiki, the WE notes list.
Oh, thank you.
There we go. So. Unless there's anything more to be said about our current working model and how we can improve it, I think we can then move on to fixing the date for the next meeting. I've suggested between 6 or 7 weeks from now, either the week starting the 15th or the 21st of July. Any initial suggestions and reactions? Is that a good time?
Would that be your 15th or my 15th?
From recollection, it most probably my 15th, but obviously it would be within a working day in your time zone. I'll set it up accordingly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be okay for me, this is David S. I'm not actually in the state of Tasmania on that day, but I still think I can come in via the Google Hangout.
Yeah.
Okay, here.
So what I'll do... sorry, Erwin?
I just said okay for me.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll look to scheduling a date, let's say in that week of the 15th, and we'll see what's the best date in terms of that works out for most folk, and then we can get that fixed in our diaries. And again, that's it's a nice peg in the ground for the working groups, because as far as my knowledge goes, most of the working groups have agreed to have another meeting before the next OERu MC meeting. So it's a good way to keep our progress going and reporting back on the challenges we are grappling with. Okay. So any items under general? No, it looks like we've got this pretty much covered. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll get the minutes posted in the wiki as soon as possible, hopefully by the end of today. And we'll take it from there. So a big thank you to everyone for your time. I was hoping to get done within an hour, but we finished within the scheduled time, at least.
Yep, we did.
Well done, Wayne.
Good work as always.
Yeah,
Right,
well done, everybody.
Yeah. Right, thanks everyone.
See you all
Cheers.
around.
Thanks, everyone. Nice
See you
hearing
around.
from you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
All right.
Bye, Wayne. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Ciao.